All right, so let's take a look at batch exception handling. Now, before we get into the slide here, if we go back to our last example and we just run it one more time and click the Create List button, we can see that we get a Microsoft.SharePoint.Client.Server exception. So this means that code that was running on the server has failed, and that's being sent back to the client. So what we could do is we could try to get the list, and if we do get the list, we know it exists, we won't create it. But if that fails, right, if we get an exception, then we know the list doesn't exist, so now let's go create it. The problem is that that technique requires 2 service calls. Now, in this case, okay, we have 1 service call or 2 service calls. It's not really a big deal. But if we multiply that by several times when we're running an entire application, that can actually end up having a pretty significant performance effect. So what we can do instead is we can actually do the exception handling on the server side. So we can say on the server, check to see if the list exists. If it doesn't, then it's still on the server. Now go and create the list and then return us a reference to the list. And we do this using an exception handling scope. Now, the managed implementations of the client object model, the .NET implementation and the Silverlight implementations, also have what's called a conditional scope, but that doesn't exist in the JavaScript client object model. So I'm going to show you just the exception handling scope in this course.